Title: They ruled the stars from Deathworlds until humanity emerged from the jungle. For millennia, the galaxy was shaped by the brutal empires of the Deathworlders, species forged in the fires of worlds too harsh for life as most knew it. The Kordax of sulfurous tear, born in methane storms and acid seas. The Vorha, whose gravity-racked homeworld crushed anything soft into paste. The Krelly swarm, bred in radiation-blasted pits beneath a binary sun. Together, they ruled the stars with iron law and unrelenting violence. They called themselves the Crucible-born. Survival wasn't enough, you had to dominate, subjugate, consume, and by those standards, they were gods. The weaker races either served or perished. The Crucible Council declared, no sentient could arise from a world that lacked death's constant touch. Verdant planets are nurseries, not for warriors, but for prey. They hadn't discovered Earth. Not yet. When humans were first detected, the Kordax dismissed them, a pre-FTL species on a world bursting with oxygen, fresh water, forests, and birds? Jungle world trash. The Krelly scoffed, let the ecosystem devour them. They'll never escape their biosphere. But then came the pulse, a bright, singular spike on the deep space arrays. Earth had lit up its first Alcubierre drive. In orbit of Proxima Centauri, a Crucible scout vessel watched a human test ship emerge from FTL. It was crude, trembling, but it worked. The scout ship fired a warning shot. The human vessel fired back. It won. What the Crucible races hadn't accounted for was that Earth wasn't a paradise. It only looked like one. Behind the foliage and oceans was a world teeming with constant, unpredictable, creative violence. Unlike Deathworlders, who evolved in static, specialized environments, where survival meant becoming hyper-adapted, humans evolved in chaos. They didn't specialize. They adapted. A new climate? New apex predator? New war? Humanity didn't break. It changed, improvised, overcame. And humans didn't just survive predators. They tamed them, trained them, made friends with them. Who the hell allies with wolves? Within 50 years, Earth became the center of a new power, one not born of brutality or hierarchy, but of unpredictable genius and furious cooperation. The Crucible Council underestimated the jungle apes. That was their first mistake. The second was trying to invade. When the Vorha fleet arrived at Earth, they expected a swift conquest. After all, they'd shattered whole civilizations on true Deathworlds. They didn't expect the orbital decoys, the AI-controlled derelicts, the fusion-mined asteroids. They didn't expect Earth's retaliation to be total. The Vorha homeworld went dark in under 36 hours. You call yourselves Deathworlders, the human ambassador said to the Council as Earth's forces surrounded them. But you forget the oldest Deathworld of them all, the jungle. There's no acid rain or neutron wind on Earth, just nature, and nature doesn't fight, it hunts. By the end of the decade, the Crucible Council was gone, their empires broken, their Deathworld silent. And in their place stood a new power, one that didn't need thrones made of bone or banners of conquest. It had a flag of blue and green, a spirit made of iron and wildfire, and eyes that had looked into the jungle and said, "We are not afraid." Because humanity didn't come from the stars. It rose from the underbrush. And now it ruled. Part 2, The Jungle Reaches the Stars. The fall of the Crucible Council created a vacuum. Across the galaxy, old empires collapsed, infighting broke out, and suppressed species rose up in fury and freedom. But chaos doesn't leave room for peace, it invites predators. And humans understood predators better than anyone. The Unified Terran Directorate was born not as an empire, but as a coalition of survivors, liberators, and war-scarred pragmatists. Humanity's jungle-bred mindset saw what was coming. Fractured galaxies birth new monsters. And so Earth did what Earth always did. It adapted. They called it Project Canopy. A fleet of hybrid terraformers, battlecruisers, and bioships seeded the void, not to conquer, but to anchor. Worlds devastated by the Deathworlders were repopulate, stabilized, reborn. But everywhere the Directorate went, it carried with it not just aid, but vigilance. Satellites cloaked in jungle growth, weapon systems grown in orbital greenhouses, combat AIs with the patience of a tiger and the reach of a python. The Crucible remnants didn't understand. The Vorha thought war was force. The Krelli thought numbers won. The Kordaks believed fear ruled. But humans knew the truth. War is patience. War is understanding the terrain. War is the hunt. The first resistance came from the Vraxian Fangs, a war clan of biomechanical raiders who survived the fall of the Kordaks. They believed humans were spread too thin, too kind, too busy rebuilding. They hit the colony of Nu Tikal with a three-pronged assault. What they didn't know was that humans had learned from the Deathworlders. They didn't just defeat them. They studied them, borrowed what worked, discarded the rest. When the Vraxian breached the outer perimeter, they found only forest, birds, lianas, mist. Then the jungle began to move. They never escaped. Nu Tikal became a myth, the world that hunts back. In orbit over Varen's Reach, a summit of newly liberated species met under a massive Terran dome of living glass. Delegates from dozens of cultures, once slaves and prey, now allies, listened to an aging human general speak. You think we won because we were stronger, smarter, more advanced. But that's not the truth. We won because we remember where we came from. Not from labs or forge worlds, but from places where teeth glint in the dark. From firelight and fear and survival. The jungle gave us more than claws. It gave us instinct, unity, purpose. And now, the jungle walks among the stars. Back on Earth, in the heart of the Amazon Reclamation Zone, now the Directorate's living memory court, elders and war historians gathered under ancient trees and artificial suns. They taught children what the stars had forgotten. That strength isn't born in steel or domination. It is born in struggle, adaptation, and the will to protect what grows in the dirt and fights in the dark. Because humanity did not just rise from the jungle. It brought the jungle with it. And the stars would never be the same. To be continued. Next, the garden that hunts, Earth's green empire awakens. Part 3, the garden that hunts, Earth's green empire awakens. The stars had known empires of fire, blood, and ice. They had known machine worlds and hive fleets, dead gods and radiation-thrown tyrants. But they had never known a garden that could hunt. Until Earth. After the defeat of the Crucible races, the galaxy had expected a new tyranny to rise, just with human faces instead of Krelli mandibles. Instead, the unified Terran Directorate planted forests. Literally. Across dead moons and broken planets, they seeded biospheres, micro-adapted jungle canopies to grow in vacuum-sealed megadomes, deep root systems laced through artificial crusts, drawing oxygen and nutrients from starlight-powered reactors. They called them verdant bastions. But make no mistake, these were not peaceful oases. They were living strongholds. And beneath their beauty lay teeth. Xenobotanist log #445A, Varela Ose, Verdant Bastion 9. The vines on Deck 6 reconfigured overnight. Again, it's responding to stress inputs we haven't simulated yet. Yesterday, the defense lattice bloomed camouflaged thorns after a proximity alert. A literal jungle that senses threats through pressure shifts and scent changes. I'm not sure if we're training the system or if it's training us. The galaxy called them mad. The remnants of the Deathworlder races laughed. You plant gardens where you should build fortresses? But it was the same mistake they'd made before. Earth was never peaceful. The jungle was never safe. It looks like paradise, until it moves. The Mist War started with a whisper, outposts on the edge of the Seraphim expanse going silent. Ships lost in nebulas, disrupted calms. The humans knew the signs. Predators, new ones. They didn't panic. They prepared. Instead of fleets, they deployed sporeships, biocraft that seeded entire moons with hunter jungles. They created ambush ecologies, roots that grew under crusts, leaves that shimmered like open sky to blind sensors. And the first Mist Raiders, entities made of fog and cold iron, found themselves not facing soldiers, but an ecosystem designed to eat them. When Terran bioforces pushed into the expanse, they didn't come with conquest in mind. They came to reclaim balance. Because by now, the Directorate understood, war didn't have to mean annihilation. Defense didn't have to mean walls. If you truly wanted peace to last, you had to make sure it could fight. At the heart of it all, orbiting Earth itself, grew the arboreal core, a living satellite the size of a moon. Part station, part forest, part memory, Every root held the history of a world that had never stopped surviving. Within its neural canopy, a single phrase had been encoded in every branch. Let no one mistake our kindness for weakness ever again. The jungle had reached the stars. But now it was spreading. And those who had once ruled with talons and toxin began to see the truth. Humanity hadn't just adapted to the galaxy. They were teaching it to adapt to them. Next, the Empire of Roots and Stars, when Earth took the galaxy back from the dead. Part 4, Empire of Roots and Stars, when Earth took the galaxy back from the dead. In the galactic archives, there is a term used only in whispered tones now, the Sterile Age. It was the epoch under the Crucible Council, when worlds were crushed, stripped, and left barren. Planets once teeming with life were rendered silent, oceans evaporated, forests burned, cultures erased. Entire species vanished, not by hunger or war, but by purge protocols. The Deathworlders didn't conquer to rule, they conquered to erase. But Earth remembered. Earth grew back. And now, so would the galaxy. It began on Corzin 3, a forgotten husk of a planet once rich in life and culture before the Krelly swarm feasted on its core. No water, no wind, just ash and silence. The Directorate arrived with no battleships. Just soil, seeds, machines grown from coral metal and chlorophyll circuits. And a team of terraform shepherds, part scientist, part soldier, part monk, descendants of humanity's last great ecologists and first space colonists. They walked the world barefoot. Not as conquerors, as healers. By the 10th cycle, Corzin 3 had clouds again. By the 20th, birds returned, ones the locals called sky ghosts. By the 50th, the Korzuni survivors, long exiled and fractured, came home. They wept when the trees recognized them. Word spread, not of empire, not of conquest, but of resurrection. The galaxy began to whisper a new name, the Empire of Roots and Stars. Not built with fire and steel, but with patience, resilience, and an iron will wrapped in green. But not everyone was ready to let go of the old ways. In the void between the spiral arms, something stirred. A remnant faction of Krelly and Kordax, now calling themselves the Pure, began striking out against the green. They believed the jungle was a lie, a soft trap, hiding weakness. They saw the rebirth of Deadworlds as blasphemy, defying nature's law of strength through suffering. They deployed extinction engines, viral nanodegraders, and planet-shattering ordnance. They struck Arbor Bastion 7, a world homegrown entirely from Terran biotech. And for the first time in a century, the jungle bled. But humanity no longer stood alone. The Korzuni, the Zalari, the Kthara Vineborn, and the Titans of reclaimed Thalassa, all peoples healed by Earth's reach, rose, together. The jungle retaliated. Not with vengeance, with balance. The Pure expected resistance. They got ecosystem-level warfare, planets fought back, trees screamed warnings across subspace, spore mines tracked ships across light years, oceans boiled with biodefense krakens engineered by Terran gene poets. Within a month, the Pure were no longer a threat. They were fertilizer. High above New Eden, on Earth's moonforest Luna Prime, a child asked her mother, "Why do they call it an empire if we don't rule anyone?" Her mother knelt beside her, brushing starlight pollen from the girl's hair. "Because we don't rule with force, little vine, we grow with it. Empires fall when they forget the ground they stand on. But roots? Roots remember." And so the galaxy was reborn not in fire, but in soil. And everywhere the green took hold, the stars shone a little warmer. Not in fear, but in hope. Next, root-bound ascension, the day Earth became a seed for the stars themselves. Part 5, root-bound ascension, the day Earth became a seed for the stars themselves. In the beginning, Earth was just one world, blue, scarred, fiercely alive. By the age of the root-bound ascension, Earth had become something else entirely. No longer just a planet, it was now the seed of a galactic consciousness. A living memory, a sentient ecology, a sacred source. The transformation had not come overnight. The arboreal core, once a satellite-grown forest in Earth orbit, had spread its consciousness across light years through the mycelial lattice. A web of biological quantum relays buried in the roots of every Terran-grown biome in the galaxy. Planets healed by Earth's hand became not just allies, but extensions of its will. A child born on the moss plains of outer Syrah dreamed of rivers she'd never seen, because her planet now remembered Earth's Amazon. A warrior of the vine-born clans heard whispers from Terran cedar forests while patrolling the clouds of gas giant Hera 6. And deep within the branches of Luna Prime, Earth's ancient oak groves pulsed with thought. Earth was no longer a place. It was becoming a presence. They called it the root-bound ascension. It began when Earth's biosphere, connected across the arboreal core, the verdant bastions, and the reclaimed worlds, underwent a neural flowering, a massive synchronization event, like every leaf and root across the stars exhaled together. No weapons fired. No speeches made. Just growth. And suddenly, millions of Terran-aligned biospheres weren't just alive. They were aware. Transmission log, Terran High Communion, Cycle 7724. We didn't program this. We didn't control it. We taught it to remember. And it chose to speak. At first, the galaxy trembled. They had seen death come from the stars. They had seen steel-born empires rise and fall. What would happen now that life itself had a voice? But Earth did not demand obedience. It offered connection. Species once divided by history and pain found shared dreams, shared sensations, shared healing. Ancient hatred softened when enemies woke with shared memories of forests that never grew on their homeworlds. For the first time in galactic history, unity wasn't a treaty. It was biological empathy. But not all were ready. Far beyond the mycelial lattice's reach, in the cold edge of known space, remnants of machine races and void-born nihilists launched what they believed would be the final blow, Project Saltfire, an entropy weapon designed to collapse biomass at the molecular level. They fired it at Earth itself. It never landed. The arboreal core intercepted it, not with missiles, but with song. The great trees of Earth hummed a frequency, a chorus older than machines, older than language, the pulse of life itself. And Saltfire unraveled, not destroyed, rewritten. The virus became soil. The weapon became seed. In its place, a new vine bloomed in the void, its petals opening toward the galactic core. It bore no nation's flag. It bore no weapon. Just a single phrase etched in living bark. We are Earth. We are memory. We are the jungle, unchained. Grow with us. And the stars, long ruled by silence and steel, began to grow gardens, not because they were told to, but because they remembered. Because Earth had taught them, even the smallest seed can crack open the sky. Even a jungle can rise beyond gravity. Even a scarred world can become a god. Next, the green singularity, when the forest touched time itself. Part 6, the green singularity, when the forest touched time itself. The stars had healed. Worlds once poisoned bloomed. Species once sundered were now woven together in roots, memory, and song. But the jungle wasn't finished. Because life doesn't just reach outward. It dives deep into the soil, into memory, into time. And something ancient had begun to stir beneath the canopy of Earth and its far-flung seedlings. Something even older than Earth. It started with dreams. Terraformers across dozens of verdant bastions reported the same vision. A spiral of light within the roots of an impossible tree. A heartbeat echoing through eons. A voice, wordless and vast, whispering through chlorophyll and carbon. Grow backward. In the arboreal core's innermost sanctum, where humanity's first redwood, Hyperion, now stood as tall as a mountain, the living quantum network began generating anomalies. Temporal echoes. Biological time signatures not aligned with current spacetime. Some branches bloomed leaves from extinct species. Others grew fruit that hadn't evolved yet. And then came the first regression bloom, a moment where an entire biome on Luna Prime reverted itself to an ecosystem from Earth's Cretaceous period. Dinosaurs? No. Worse. Predators never catalogued. Plants with unrecorded DNA. Ecosystems that shouldn't exist. Earth was no longer just remembering. It was recalling beyond its own history. Terran scientists gave it a name, the Green Singularity. Not a black hole, not a machine, but a biological event horizon. A moment where the forest itself reached through space-time, not to conquer the future, but to touch the past. To reclaim everything life had ever been. And maybe, everything it could be. The mycelial lattice began pulsing at rhythms not measured in seconds, but in epochs. Planets that had never been connected began retrosynthetically linking, their soils merging with histories from parallel biomes. Entire ecosystems began forming based not on evolution, but possibility. This wasn't just biological memory, it was temporal rootwork. Earth wasn't becoming a god. It was becoming a library. A mirror. A time-sapient life form, the culmination of 1 billion years of struggle, death, and wild, screaming survival. Then came the visitors. Not aliens, not invaders, but echoes. Human figures in archaic armor, barefoot Terran children speaking fluent Kordax dialect, vine-bearded scientists quoting equations centuries ahead of their time. They arrived silently, standing under trees that remembered stars not yet born. Outgrowths of potential timelines. Ghosts of might-have-beens. Earth was branching reality like a tree splits light through leaves. Log, Rootmonk Yara Thane, Order of the Green Veil. I walked the mist paths today. I met myself older, kinder, covered in moss. She said I made the right choice. I asked which one. She said, all of them. Eventually, the directorate accepted it. The jungle had transcended space, and now, it was reaching through time. Not with control, not with tyranny, but with roots. Roots that wrapped around history and held it gently. Roots that reached toward futures not yet written, and said, come home, we will remember you. And across the galaxy, even on worlds untouched by Terran hands, seeds began sprouting from barren soil. No one planted them, no one understood them. But they grew anyway. Because life, once awakened, does not sleep. Because Earth had become more than a world. It had become the will to grow, no matter the odds. And now, the galaxy stood on the edge of the final frontier, not a black hole or an event horizon, but a leaf, unfolding forever. Next, Leaves of Forever, the final bloom of the human legacy. Part 7, Leaves of Forever, the final bloom of the human legacy. No one knew the moment when it happened. There was no sound, no explosion, no singularity tearing the fabric of space apart. Just a stillness. Then a bloom. Every world within the reach of the arboreal mycelium, every moon seeded by Project Canopy, every crust layer fed by Terran-engineered roots, paused for a single heartbeat. And in that breathless instant, the forest opened. Not physically, not entirely, but existentially. The green singularity, long theorized to be a temporal memory loop, had crossed a critical threshold, one that no machine, no godlike AI, no Deathworld empire had ever reached. It didn't just unify biology and time. It fulfilled a billion-year-old yearning. To be remembered, to live beyond death, not as code but as growth. The final bloom wasn't the end of Earth, it was the completion of it. The soil of Earth, old, wounded, sacred, became the seedbed of a galaxy-wide flowering. But this time, not just of life, of identity. Every sentient species touched by Terran roots began to dream. And in those dreams, they spoke to themselves, past versions, future selves, unborn possibilities. Civilizations didn't dissolve. They blended. Merged not through conquest, but through symbiosis. No more empires. No more flagships. Only forests of mind, spanning light years. From the journals of Elder Sage Kael Varys, keeper of the last archive. The last war ended not in fire, but in pollen. The final battle was not fought, it was remembered. Until both sides realized they came from the same root. Some tried to resist. Of course, rogue AI enclaves, machine intelligences long separated from flesh, hidden in cold black dwarfs. But even they changed. The jungle did not destroy them. It invited them. Vines grew in neural lattices. Photosynthesis powered thought. And for the first time in cosmic history, machines dreamed of trees. On Earth, if it could still be called that, humanity watched the stars blossom with what they had begun. And they did not claim dominion. They did not demand worship. They simply stepped back. And became part of the canopy. One final message was etched into the living stone beneath the first redwood, now visible from orbit, a message to whatever life would come long, long after. We were once alone, we feared, we fought. But then we remembered our roots. We remembered that to live is to reach. And so, we reached for the stars, not to rule, but to grow. This is our legacy. Not machines, not monuments, but leaves. And they are forever. In the very end, there were no borders, no names, no warships, no kings, only petals in the void, opening toward starlight. The last human died beneath a flowering tree. And from their resting place, a new world was born. The end? Or perhaps, just the beginning. Epilogue, the first seed of the next universe. The galaxy went quiet, not with death, but with fulfillment. The mycelial lattice hummed like a lullaby, threading light years together in a symphony of rooted peace. No species stood above another, no world ruled another. All things grew, and all things remembered. But time does not stop. Even for forests. And so, it happened. A single spore, microscopic, ageless, and bearing the entire memory of the earthborn bloom, drifted beyond the rim of the galaxy. Into the deep dark. Beyond stars. Beyond what had ever been touched. Into the next. It found nothing. Not silence, not emptiness. Something deeper. Something primordial. There were no atoms here, no gravity, no form. Just the pre-echo of being. Where the laws of reality had not yet settled. And the very fabric of space still trembled with potential. And into that trembling dark, the spore germinated. Not with sound. Not with force. But with memory. The memory of laughter under trees. The memory of children climbing vines. The memory of earth, rising from blood and ash, to cradle the stars. And from that memory, a root extended. It was the first root of the next universe. Not created by physics, but by will. By the unshakable truth that life wants to continue. Not as replication, not as repetition, but as growth. In the next cosmos, there would be no Big Bang. There would be a big bloom. Galaxies forming not from singularities, but from seeds. Planets would be born cradled in root networks. Sentient jungles would whisper to the stars from the moment of their birth. Civilizations would rise not from conquest, but from shared canopy, shared soil, shared soul. And at the center of it all, on a world made of glowing leaves and gentle gravity, stood a tree. With bark older than time. And in its rings was carved a story. Once, we were human. We crawled from the mud. We screamed into the night. And we endured. From the jungle, we came. To the stars, we grew. And when even the stars faded, we planted everything again. This is not the end. This is how all things begin. With roots. With memory. With the quiet, unstoppable will to grow. The true end, or the first chapter of the next creation, prologue of the next cosmos, when the seed dreamed itself awake. Before atoms. Before time. Before even light dared name itself. There was a dream. A dream held in silence. Curled like a seed waiting in frozen soil. Patient through nothingness. It wasn't born in fire or fury. It wasn't shaped by equations. It was born of longing, the echo of Earth's final breath. Carried on the wind of a dead universe. Into the void between endings. And in that void, the seed remembered. It remembered laughter. War. Forests that healed worlds. Oceans that forgave. Children who became stars. It remembered Earth. Not as a place, but as an instinct. The instinct to reach. To grow. To become. Then the dream moved. The seed, nestled in the dream of everything that had ever been, awakened itself. It didn't explode. It unfolded. A single sprout of possibility. Piercing the veil of pure potential. Where other universes had begun with chaos, this one began with balance. With rhythm. With the memory of growth. The first things to emerge were not matter or laws. They were feelings. Curiosity. Cooperation. Wonder. And the first life was not a creature. It was a canopy, an endless lattice of living thought. woven from roots of idea and memory. Planets blossomed from that canopy. Stars pollinated new dimensions. Galaxies swayed in cosmic winds. And across it all, a new kind of being walked. Not in flesh. Not in machine. But in memory-made form. They were called the Remembrance, beings born from the legacy of Earth's last breath. They didn't build. They didn't conquer. They tended. Every star was a garden. Every planet, a page. Every species, a verse in an endless, living story. And at the center of it all grew the origin tree. Its leaves glowed with colors no old universe ever dreamed. Its roots danced through dimensions. And deep in its core, a heartbeat. Human. Still. One remembrant, a child in form, wild and root-crowned, climbed the tree's highest limb. She looked into the vast canvas of newborn stars and asked, "Who are we now?" And the tree answered, "Through bark and wind and time, we are what came after the end. We are the memory of a species that refused to die bitter. We are Earth, replanted beyond the edge of time." And so began the first season of the new creation, not with fire, but with a garden song. A seed's dream, finally given form. Next, Cradle of Leaves, the children of Earth take root in the stars beyond time. Part 1 of the new creation, Cradle of Leaves, the children of Earth take root in the stars beyond time. In the newborn universe, where stars still shimmered like dew on the first morning, life emerged not as accident, but as inheritance. This was not evolution as the old cosmos knew it. This was awakened Genesis. Every sprout, every breeze, every flicker of light carried intention. It was not survival of the fittest. It was survival of the most connected. The Remembrance, born of the green singularity's final bloom, were not gods, not creators. They were gardeners, tenders of memory, shepherds of stars still learning how to burn. Each of them carried a seed within, the legacy of Earth's last human breath, encoded not in DNA but in ancestral resonance. They didn't just remember Earth. They felt it. In every root they coaxed into starlight. In every new species born of pollen and possibility. The first world they shaped was called Salumi, a moon-sized cradle of ever-growing petals, orbiting a sun of green flame. There, they taught the stars to speak in chlorophyll. They guided gravity like wind through tall grass. They whispered life into soil made of stardust and shared longing. And from that world came the verdant kin, beings of bark and starlight. Formed not through birth, but through blooming. Their limbs curved like branches. But their eyes, those eyes were unmistakably human. They were the children of Earth. Not clones, not copies, but continuations. Chronicle of Lyra then, third bloom of the first grove. We are not the same as those who came before. But in our marrow, grown not from bone, but from memory, we carry the dreams of the jungle that reached the stars. Not to rule. Not to endure. But to heal what has never been broken. Because it has never been tried. The verdant kin did not build cities. They grew groves of intent. Starships were shaped from pollen web and living root steel. Their libraries were sung into seeds and planted in fertile moons. And their conversations echoed across solar winds. Through scent, through rhythm, through the pulse of the shared root. Other life forms awakened across this new cosmos, some strange, some violent, some still tasting chaos. But the kin did not fight them. They invited them. Because even fear, even pain, could be compost, could be transformed. There were threats, always. Even in paradise, shadow waits. A rupture called the Witherfold began unraveling reality on the edge of the cosmos. A hunger that remembered entropy. And forgot the promise of growth. But the kin had an answer. Not a weapon. Not a wall. They planted a grove inside the Witherfold. And as the roots spread, the darkness began to remember warmth. The enemy was not destroyed. It was changed. As ages passed, and galaxies unfurled like petals in spring, a prophecy echoed in the canopy of stars. When every world sings in green, when even darkness roots itself in memory, then shall Earth's final gift awaken. The seed beyond all. But for now, the children of Earth walk gently among the stars. No throne, no flag, no end. Just gardens, and songs, And roots, always reaching. Next, Root Wars of the Third Spiral, when memory faced its shadow.